What did you make of the new MP for Selby? I mean, good to have an injection of youth into Parliament?
I think it's always good to get new people in politics. I mean, I think we mustn't become a sort of repeat of the in-betweeners, right? So I think you've got to have people who've
What do you mean by that?
Done stuff. Well, this guy has, he's been at Oxford University more than he's been in a job. You put a chip in him there and he just relates Labour lines. And the problem is people have kind of had enough of that, right? They want people who are authentic, people who've worked in that constituency, who know what life is like, understand what life is like, to live, work and raise a family in communities like theirs. So no, I'm afraid I don't agree with this style of politics. It's exactly why people like me didn't vote for the 2015 election, because you've got people with nothing to do with the constituency just dropped in and, put a chip in them and they'll start parroting Labour Party politics. Good for me, because I don't think people are going to vote for it, right? So, I mean, he says there's no love for Keir Starmer. I love Keir Starmer. I think he's fantastic because people can't stand him on the doors. They don't know what he stands for and none of them are going to vote for him. So I'm, good on Keir. Let's keep going.
It's time to get these clowns out of number 10. And so, we're going to do that. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Very good morning to you. Rishi Sunak has been spared the indignity of becoming the first Prime Minister since 1968 to lose 3 by-elections, but instead you've lost 2 of them by huge margin and just scraped a third. Not a great night.
Well, it's a mixed set of results. Clearly, we're disappointed by the results in Selby and Ainsty, Somerton and Frome. We'll listen carefully to the electorate in both of those constituencies. We had amazing candidates in Claire Holmes and Faye Purbrick in those 2 seats, and I'm looking forward to working with them in the future. But you also mentioned Uxbridge, and I think the Uxbridge by-election has also got important lessons there. I think people were voting against a London mayor, a Labour London mayor who'd not run things properly in London. He hasn't run things properly for 7 years. And it shows that people don't like, if they see Labour in charge and they see the Labour Party botching things, making a hash of things, then people will vote against that.
In other parts of the country where you did very well in 2019, you've been absolutely thumped. Do the results from last night not show us that the country isn't buying your message and you still have a mountain to climb?
Look, Westminster's been acting like the next election's a done deal. The Labour Party's been acting like it's a done deal. The people of Uxbridge just told all of them that it's not. Now, no one expected us to win here, but Steve's victory demonstrates that when confronted with the actual reality of the Labour Party, when there's an actual choice on a matter of substance at stake, people vote Conservative.
Keir Starmer flip-flopped on his views on the ULEZ, which was the principal issue in the Uxbridge by-election. Keir Starmer, an inner London MP, had been constantly backing ULEZ. He goes to outer London and starts expressing doubts about the policy, backing his candidate's doubts about the policy. And if you cannot have a Prime Minister who's saying one thing in one part of London and a different thing in a different part of London, that is not somebody to be running the country.
How concerned are you that there will be other constituencies around London, in Greater London, that will go the same way because they are so concerned about the ULEZ charge? And what will you do about it in terms of strategy?
Well, I think it's something that both the Conservatives and Labour have to consider, is that actually what we need to do is have clean air. Of course we need that because we've got excess deaths, but we've also got to make sure that people are able to do the right thing. And it's very clear that Londoners are saying we want to do the right thing, but we can't afford a ULEZ charge when we haven't got a scrappage scheme that meets the requirements for us to change our behaviours and change our vehicles.
Now, you can also see from the results both in Somerton and Frome and also in Uxbridge that, where we do have results that either the Lib Dems or the Labour votes totally collapsed to sort of, a few hundred votes, basically, because there is clearly a very effective campaign going on, which I think was slightly alluded to by Grant earlier on, where it's quite clear that the Lib Dems and Labour have entered some form of agreement between themselves as to either campaign in one place or not. Oh, OK, who was your candidate in Somerton and Froome?
Neil Guild. I know him well. You have campaigned with him, and he's an absolutely brilliant bloke. And voters are pretty smart. They work out for themselves what they want to do. If they don't have, like the Tory incumbency, then they work out what to do. We campaigned in all 3 seats. We think it's important that everywhere there's a Labour candidate who works hard and is prepared to put themselves forward.
So can you remember how many votes your candidate got in Somerton and Froome?
1,003?
9.
1,009.
Which is around 7,000 less than in the general election. So to the outsider, it does look as if there's been some tactical voting.
I mean, it's a bit. It's but that's the only people who think there's a pact seems to be the Tories.
A little bit earlier, before you arrived, Jenny, we're having a discussion about the new Labour MP in Selby, and Johnny Mercer said, we don't want Parliament to become like the in-betweeners.
Johnny, that's a bit harsh.
What you make of that.
No, I think that's a bit off, actually. I mean, he's a young person, but he's not full of himself. He's somebody who's very considered, he's intelligent, he's done a great job, he's related really well to his now constituents in Selby, and it's their call, actually, who represents them. And that's not what they thought. They thought he was the right person to do the job.
What did you mean by in-betweeners, Johnny?
Because I think this synthetic outrage, identikit Labour politician is the opposite of what people like me came into politics for, right? I became an MP because I thoroughly disliked that sort of representation and that kind of fictional, outrage all the time about the Conservatives. I think that, this guy, he's been at Oxford University more than he's had a job, right? So if you can really apply that to the empathy required to understand what it's really like in this country at the moment, in terms of the cost of living, in terms of all these experiences of the people he's trying to represent. Personally, I don't think that is conducive to good electoral representation, and I'm more than entitled to have that view.
Well, you're entitled to have whatever view you like, clearly, but there is such a thing as being gracious in defeat, Johnny, and that, honestly, that's disrespectful to the voters. Well, that doesn't sound like it to me. And you're being disrespectful to the voters of Selby, who've made a decision that you don't happen to like.
No, it's not at all. It's about the quality of politicians in this country, which I've always commented on.
One of the good things about our Parliament is that we have people entering Parliament for the first time in their 20s, but also in their 60s, from all kinds of backgrounds. And I think that's a strength. So, and I think if you start to say...
Age doesn't matter, right?
Well,
but if you put a chip in them and they just relate Keir Starmer's policies without any, grounding in the Constitution...
I think now you're just getting a bit insulting and rude.
How many times he's been dropped into that constituency, right? And he's gone in there and he's spouted all these identikit Keir Starmer lines, which is the easy thing to do at a midterm when the Tories have been in 13 years.
Johnny Mercer, how many Tory advisors end up becoming Tory MPs, trotting out the line time and time again?
5 pledges. We hear about them all the time.
Good pledges, aren't they? Fantastic.
Would you ban Tory advisors, Tory special advisors, from becoming MPs?
I've got nothing to say on that. I think that
our chips
people become. Have I had a Conservative chip inserted into me, Sam?
I wonder if you can react, first of all, to what Johnny Mercer said in this studio a little bit earlier on, likening Keir Mather, who's just won for Labour in Selby, to one of the in-betweeners. What do you make of that?
I think the Conservatives need to read the room.
Prime Minister, new Lib Dem MP for Somerton Frome, Sarah Dyke, talked about the circus of chaos of the Conservative government. How much of the bad results, not in Uxbridge, but elsewhere in the country, the huge swings against you, are the result of the chaos under Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, and how much of this is on you? And after 13 years, aren't people just fed up of the Conservatives?
Mid-term by-elections are rarely easy for incumbent governments. These are no different. And look, the reality is the circumstances of these by-elections are far from favourable. It's a reminder to politicians that we need to focus on what matters to people and not be distracted by what's going on in Westminster. And if you just look at what have we been doing over the last couple of weeks, we've been making a major difference to people. The inflation numbers we had just the other day show that our plan is working, easing the burden on the cost of living. We had an announcement of billions of pounds of investment in our auto industry. industry. One of the largest investments in decades, going to create thousands of jobs. We announced a long-term workforce plan for the NHS, welcomed by over 40 NHS stakeholders, so we can train more doctors and nurses here at home, and we passed our Stop the Boats bill, one of the toughest pieces of legislation to ensure that we can stop the boats. That's what we're doing. We're getting on and delivering people, and that's what I'm going to do all the way to the next election.